Hey, welcome to our podcast. We've got a special privilege today. We're joined by one of our favorite clients, Invisible Sun, and their president and CEO, John Kunzier, as well as Stephanie Ambrose. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
May I say something?
Please, John,
They are not one of our favorite clients. They are.
our favorite client.
Well, wait, I
They,
don't want to, I don't want to upset other clients. So if
Yeah.
one
You
of
don't
they
have to
is,
worry
are.
about that.
They are our favorite client. And yes, we are very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We will circle back to John and Stephanie in a moment. But first, Jeff, good morning.
Good morning, John.
Fiddling with my light here, which was on a minute ago. So, hey, Gelman, is the lighting still okay? Good morning, Gelman.
You look great, John. Good
All
morning,
right.
folks.
My light went off. Technical difficulties. Live television, as they say. Okay, this isn't live, but
Well,
So yeah, we typically record about a week ahead of time. So today, before we post, today is Friday, July 10th. The World Cup is still moving forward. Um, we're in the quarterfinals now. The first quarterfinalist as of yesterday was France. And today we have Spain and Belgium. And then a couple of games over the weekend. And then by the time this posts, Jeff, we'll be into the semifinals. We will not yet be in the final, but we'll be in the semifinals. So it's been quite a tournament here in Dallas, where the Global Media Center is. We are hosting more matches than any other city throughout the tournament. So everybody's been really, really excited about the World Cup.
huge
Now,
number of viewers. Huge
oh,
number of viewers.
incredible. Now, not that anyone's surprised by this, but it's been quite hot in Dallas this summer, right? Now, of course, indoor stadium, right? So the heat has not been an issue during the games, but I'm sure the millions of people who have come to DFW for the games, I'm sure they were warned in advance. It's going to be a little hot there, but it's been quite hot, but it's been really hot all over the country, like really hot. So quiz time. Okay. What was the hottest summer on record in the history of the world? And it's, and well, I'm not going to give you a hint. What do you guys think? History of the world. And the US number year is going to be different. This is global. And
uh,
John, in the Northeast,
yeah,
you
we
were
had
saying the other day how incredibly hot it's been for you as well.
over the July 4th holiday, it was dancing between 103 and 104 air temperature, and then feels like it was 115 with the humidity here.
Wow.
So it was really hot, and the pool water was
Nice.
91.
Oh,
Kind of gross.
yeah.
Um,
It's not just Dallas, so
you know,
that's in
Europe
Philly.
just set records for
Yep.
hottest days on
Did
record
they
in the
really?
last couple of weeks as well.
just in
Wow.
time for your visit, Stephanie. Right?
Right.
Well, we missed the worst of it actually. I think it hit 113 in Paris.
Wow.
I think Vienna was really miserable, but no, we just missed the absolute hottest days.
Wow.
My son was in Spain. It was rather toasty there,
Sure.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
hundreds.
So,
Toasty for sure.
John, I'm gonna give you a guess for the hottest. 1932.
You know what? That is a better guess than you eat. Did you just look? Did you
I
just
did not
cheat?
look it up. I did not look it up. So how I
Okay.
got there is the Great Depression and then the Dust Bowl. And the Dust Bowl would have said the weather was bad. So I went 1932. And I
Okay. You know
guessed.
what? I had great respect before this pod for Penn State University. I now have even greater respect for the education that you received at that fine institution because of this. So, okay, the answer to the question is 2024 is the hottest summer in global history.
It had to be recent, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Exactly. And 2024, but I'm going to circle back on 1932 here in a minute. Um, but 2024 was not the hottest summer in the history of the United States. 2024 was only the fourth hottest summer in the history of the US. The hottest summer in the history of the United States, 1936.
Ah,
ooh,
Mm.
close.
And exactly, and why was that? It's exactly what you said. It was the severe drought and the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well done. Well done.
Well, again, I just thought about bad weather, and that was pretty bad weather. I knew it was in the 30 somewhere, the
Yeah.
bad weather, but wow,
Well, here we are.
24. Yeah.
Yeah. This is how, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you grow up to become a chief executive officer.
You know, miscellaneous facts.
You,
So I'm going to
never
know that,
know. You
you know,
never know
fruit.
when it's going to come up.
Yeah, I better know the fruits that begin with the letter Q.
Right.
Quince.
Quince.
that's the only one I can
That's
come
all
up
I
with
can
Good
think
right
of.
one. That's from White Man Can't Jump. If you
Uh,
no
yeah.
reference. So
Great movie.
great movie.
So yeah, John and Stephanie, we'd love it if you could introduce yourselves and your company. We are very honored and privileged to support you and very happy to have you on the pod. So tell us about yourselves and Invisible Sun Technology.
Okay. Well, I will start. I'm John Kunzier. I'm the CEO, president, founder of Invisible Sun. Our goal was you know, when we started the company, we were looking for a problem to solve, and we found one in hygiene. Now, I'm a Virgo and I'm kind of anal retentive, and it kind of fit my personality. And what we do as an organization is we help facility companies and owners of buildings ensure that soft FM services are validated and we have compliance. And what's a soft FM service? Janitorial, security, landscaping, anything that supports a building operation. And we do that in a hands-free way. So it's some pretty cool IoT technology that we deploy. But the end result is our clients get visibility to something that is, you know, can be the second or third highest budget item on their within the building, and something that they just don't have a lot of accountability around, and that's what we provide.
I love it. I love it. Okay, very good. Stephanie.
Yeah, Stephanie Ambrose, and I am Chief Marketing Officer and actually co-founder of Invisible Sun Technology. And I'm not really going to add to John's description of the company. That's the perfect overview. But I will add that, you know, as we have learned and grown over the last year and a half, you know, a lot of the anecdotal stories that we've heard from folks have really established that what we're doing has a real need in the industry. You know, we've heard horror stories from facility managers of, you know, coming into their building late at night and finding their janitorial staff asleep in the lobby. Or, you know, we've heard from building managers who say they just don't know where their building staff is during the day. You know, they're hiding out in closets, or, you know, if the building has lactation rooms, right, places that aren't readily visible. And the suspicion we've been able to find is that, and find is true, is that the work is not necessarily getting done. There's really no way to validate that work is being done in these facilities. So the stories have been really interesting, and, you know, hopefully through this conversation, we'll hear more about that and the work we've been doing.
Well, that's a great segue into the subject of this podcast. Let me start with a little anecdote here. I live in Plano, Texas, as John's in North Dallas. We're not too far from each other. And we used to have a dog. We used to have a dog that hated to fly. And my wife has a mother who lives on the east coast of Florida, and we typically would visit at least once a year, but we couldn't take an airplane. We had to drive. And it's the 18-hour drive from Plano to Indian Harbor Beach, Florida, where she lives. Um, Obviously, you can't do that in one fell swoop. Obviously, you're going to have restroom stops along the way, food stops along the way. It's a beating, that drive. But you know what? You got paradise at the end of the road. You got a dream, but you always have to expect maybe a couple of nightmares along the way, and as well as good experiences. So when we would stop at rest stops, or sometimes it's better to go to like a third party facility. It was hit and miss. Sometimes they were great, sometimes they were horrible. So that's the least thing that you want when you're going off for the summer, and it's the summer travel season. So that's why we really scheduled this survey that we put out with Invisible Sun, which is, where are the dirtiest restrooms in America's travel hubs? Are they dirty? What do they do to you? Do they keep you from buying things at their concessions, at their restaurants? And I think the survey worked out really well, and we determined a lot of different things. But one of the key findings was that if you encountered an unacceptable restroom, you were much less likely to spend money for food at that rest stop, at that airport, or whatever. So that plays right into Invisible Sun's business model. And at this point, why don't I turn it over to the guys at Invisible Sun? You can give maybe a little overview of the findings, but also how that kind of relates to what you do.
Absolutely. So, when we kind of commissioned this survey, and I think we've all had that, Jeff, that experience, right? One that sticks out where you're heading out, whether it's on a business trip or a family trip, or whether you're driving or flying, and you encounter a facility that is less than hygienic. You got to make a business decision sometimes, and what's going to happen, right? And we've all made that business decision and lived to talk about it. But again, we think we wanted to see if there were consequences. We wanted to see what the opinions are around the cleanest and the dirtiest restrooms, whether it was an airport, whether it was a road stop, or a train station going forward. So, again, when we looked at it, people, right, when we're going to a rest stop, or whether we're in an airport, are more likely not to, frequent a restaurant in that rest stop or airport if the bathrooms are dirty, right? They're more likely to kind of turn a blind eye and move away. And it impacts the way that people think about that organization around it. And again, I think from when we looked at the survey, that was really what stuck out for me, which was, again, the rest stops around the globe, around the country, are probably the biggest challenge. Um, but again, we still have challenges around, train stations and airports. I do want to shout out to DFW, for example, down your neck of the woods. Hey, they were number one, right, on that survey. Um, so again, when we think about it, Union stations, for example, in Chicago and DC, were number one for train stations, and the Florida Turnpike and Pennsylvania Turnpikes, where again, you've got a captive audience. We should have clean bathrooms, right? There are some real winners in this survey, and we had some not so happy folks in some of the other places. I'm not going to necessarily call anybody out on that, but again, I think there's when we think about our travel, if we're a travel hub, that really does matter. It moves the needle for your passengers, right? For travelers, around the cleanliness and the hygiene of a travel hub.
I think for
Yeah, I
me,
think that's very valid.
yeah, and I think for me, it was really interesting to understand the behavior of travelers. A really substantial number, if they walk into a restroom facility that they don't find acceptable, will walk out and try to find another. And sometimes that's a challenge. You are kind of the captive audience, as John mentioned, particularly in highway rest stops, right? It might be several miles before the next one comes up. But really, behaviorally, restroom acceptability really does drive spending. And I personally hadn't really thought about it or made that connection until I saw the survey results.
Well, it was really clear from the survey results that that does have a huge impact. And personally speaking, do you want to go to a restroom where you would figure that the restaurants around it, those employees, those cooks and everything, use that same restroom? And so
Exactly.
that has always given me pause. Any other surprises when you looked at those results?
Well, to me, it was really if we look at the numbers, almost three quarters, we're just short of three quarters. We'll literally just leave, right?
Hmm.
They'll just leave.
Yeah.
They're going to look at it and go, so if 100 people walk in, 75 of those people, almost 75, actually 72 of them, are going to walk out of that facility and not use, just going to walk out, right? That's money. That's three quarters of your business, almost three quarters, is walking out and not going to spend a dollar with you, right?
Right.
What if you could improve your revenue at an airport or a traffic, a rest stop or a train station by 75% or even 50%? What does that do for you, right? Again, if it kind of gets to that, if you don't really care about how that looks, what's happening behind the scenes in the kitchen, right? What's happening back there? And I think that when we really get to that, and it gets to, we look at cleaning in public spaces, and we don't even think about it until we're there, and we don't think about the people that are doing that, right? We kind of let them, to the side. And we really need to kind of think about those folks as helping us, and putting them a little higher in the pecking order, because they're doing a job that we think is important, um, and we need to pay them a little better to do that job and to really focus on it. I think that, to me, that's part of it. And when we look at the stats, right, dirty toilets are the biggest areas, dirty floors, foul odors. We know exactly what that means. We all have dealt with it. And we really kind of need to put our foot down and say that's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I can think of many, many, many nights across my career where I was working late in the office and the cleaning crew shows up. You're working late when you're crossing paths with the cleaning crew. And you just kind of assume, you say, oh, okay, here they are, right? They're here for the night. Oh, I need to get home, right? But then you just kind of assume that they're doing their job, right? And those anecdotes, Stephanie, that you mentioned are unbelievable. That people do a check and they're just asleep.
Yep.
So, that was really eye-opening to me. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised because they're alone in this huge building. So I suppose that stuff's going to happen, but you just wonder how often it's happening, right? And
Well,
then with, you talk about, John, you just talked about what are the dirty toilet area, number one, number one reason for a restroom to be deemed unacceptable. Well, that's something you can see. Yeah. Dirty, dirty toilet area, number one, dirty floor, number two, foul odor, number three. Those are things that are apparent. But I suppose you could walk into a restroom and it might look clean. Like none of those things may be going on, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is clean. What if they picked up the trash and the toilet area is clean and there's no foul odors? That doesn't necessarily mean it's clean, right? So to me, that's another thing. I mean, to the naked eye, it's not like we're walking into the restroom checking it out. Actually, we do now that we've done this survey,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But does that make sense? I mean, there could be all sorts of germs in there, and you wouldn't know.
Yeah, and I think that traditionally, what do you rely on, right? Manual inspections, clipboards with the check sheets, right? Maybe it's hanging in the restroom with the last time it
Mm.
was done. But again, that's not a verification. You have no idea how much time the person spent doing work in that restroom. You don't necessarily know that there is a schedule. So the traditional methods for tracking and managing just really aren't efficient, particularly in travel hubs where there can be huge waves of traffic, right? When are the planes landing? What are the hours most people are on the road driving from one destination to another? And that's an issue that Invisible Sun is really working to solve through our technology.
Yeah.
And one of the things also, we talk about the negatives, right? The sleeping and the kind of the foul odors and the uncleanliness and hygiene issues in bathrooms. Let's just flip it around. There's also some really quality folks that are working, that are doing a good job, right?
Mhm.
And they're put in sometimes situations that are unwinnable, right? Right. Again, it's a moment in time. So let's say we're in an airport, and I've recently flown. Stephanie just got back from a visit. John, you're going, right? You land in a location in an airport with 4 other planes at the same time. Hundreds of people are descending upon, the facilities. And after 20 minutes of that, it may be disgusting, right? That's not the cleaner's problem. That's not the cleaner's fault, right? We need better ways of predicting what's happening and better ways to manage it, right? This idea of, hey, I'm gonna clean it at 8, 10, 2, and 4. In that scenario isn't practical, right? Isn't efficient. It's not going to work, right? It's going to be based on that schedule that makes more sense, and that's part of what we do also, which is, hey, look, instead of doing it based on a recurring route, hey, we're going to do it based on occupancy. How many people actually went in? So if 100 people went into that bathroom, we should expect something not to be clean. So let's understand when that happens and alert someone to make the cleaning happen right after it. So again, we need to look at it from a management facility perspective, not as a people problem. It's a process issue, right? We need to look at it as these are independent people that work independently. Many times have 2 jobs. Maybe they don't, right? Most of them try to do a good day's work, right? Like all of us, and we all know in all of our jobs, we have people that do a great job, and then we have people that don't do such a great job, right? What we want to do is reward the ones that do that, and then identify the problem areas that we have. And we do that through data, right? We now can identify that this is where we need to focus our attention. This is what didn't happen, and we'll go fix it maybe tomorrow morning or in our next shift. And that data is going to be important versus what we have today, which is complaint data, right? Nobody wants to be complained about, right? So we want to turn it from a reactive to a proactive approach, and that's what we're delivering, right? Versus, right? Hey, you know what? This is awful. I'm going to hit the frowny face on my bathroom little placard so I can tell you that I'm unhappy, right? I actually walk by them because if I look at that and that's the only way you're going to manage it, I've never even even entertained using one of those things, because if you don't care enough to kind of be proactive, what am I doing? Right? What am I helping you with?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. The
I
data,
think an
data that's involved.
interesting, yeah,
Go
another
ahead.
interesting take from the survey, and I think we found that people were pretty passionate about the third party locations that they would stop at, right? If the rest stop
Yeah.
is not for them, people were pretty passionate about, convenience stores and stops that they would regularly stop at. And I thought those responses were really interesting as well. I mean, there's one particular business that kind of made its name for being known for clean restrooms.
Are we able to
Yeah.
name names there? Because I think I know who you're talking
Well,
about.
I do
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
I don't know if we
I
can,
think we
but
should. I mean,
all
again,
right,
Bucky's. It's Bucky's. Let's just
Bucky's.
say what it is, right? They have a reputation of being traveler friendly, right? They've made a business model around it,
Yeah.
with clean showers, clean bathrooms, choice, right? they take it seriously, and they have a national and now with the World Cup, you talked about that earlier, international reputation.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
Right?
huge
Point.
following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
I'll
first
call
trip
out. Okay, sorry.
the first trip we made from here where we live in Plano down to Austin, we all had to go to the restroom at one point, and we were passing a Buc-ee's, and we had never stopped in a Buc-ee's before. And honestly, it was a transformative experience. Not just because they've got a gazillion gas pumps, pretty good prices, but you walk through that door and you encounter all these things, Texas souvenirs, clothing, staples, a whole area of fresh food that they've cooked, including smoked barbecue.
And that's in every
Fantastic. But the thing that,
location.
oh, just amazing stuff. But the thing that really catches your eye is when you go to the restroom and you walk in there and you think, my God, they must spend a gazillion hours in here keeping these places spotless. And that really has an impact. If we're driving down I-35 and we have to go and there's a state rest stop not that far away, I'll say, guys, can you hang on for another 20 minutes? We'll get to Bucky's. And 9 out of 10 times we do. So
Yeah.
just kind of an observation from me. If you have an alternative like that, you'll probably take it.
Yeah. I mean, I live up in the Northeast outside of Philadelphia. The home of Wawa, right? And
Hmm.
Wawa is now all over the East Coast and down into Florida.
Yep.
And, it is consistent, right? If I know that there's a Wawa coming up, I will go there and they get my business, right? Because I'll stop and I'll get a sandwich and I'll get something else in my travels. And I know, for example, next week I'm going down to Arlington, Virginia, and I know exactly the Wawa I'm going to stop at on Route 50,
Hmm.
down right before the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. So again, when we think about that, we all have our preferences. We work around it, but I think it's incumbent upon building owners to think that that's a very important component. That invisible, and we talk about, why do we call this company Invisible Sun, right? Our tagline is illuminate plain sight.
Mm.
Right? We want to illuminate things that are happening within that organization. Restrooms are one. We do also do occupancy management. What's the traffic look like? We combine those two things into a solution that says, hey, we can drive cleaning based on occupancy. We are creating something that we all overlook, and we elevate it to a point where it makes sense, and we now can make better decisions. And those better decisions, guess what? We think we can save you 30 to 40% on your cleaning budget, because now we're actually making things happen with the staff that you have today. I was on a call yesterday with a major facility company, and they said, we think we can improve productivity and reduce the number of people that we have to put on and drive profitability in our cleaning contracts. That's exactly what we want to look for, and we're changing the status quo. And again, we see it. That's why we did the survey. We wanted to see what the rest of us thought did, around that. And I think that's part of this survey process that we do, is to find out what people really think. Because, again, metrics are power.
Well, and the most powerful one to me, and we've already touched upon it, that there's a real financial impact here. But I had no idea that food and beverage concessions account for 26% of this is a new term for me, non-aeronautical revenue for U.S. airports, 26%. What is that 26% valued at annually? 65, well, it's 65 billion is the overall revenue, but they're at a quarter of that. So call it what, 16, 17 billion dollars that can be affected by the cleanliness of the restrooms because of the factoid, John, that you mentioned earlier, that 3 out of 4 people, if they're dissatisfied, they're running for the hills. And guess what they take with them? Their wallets.
Yeah.
Right? So this isn't just rounding around the edges. This is real money for these building owners, right?
Right. And think about what John just said, right? If we can save you 30% on your cleaning expenses by improving productivity, plus the increase to food and beverage sales, you're really talking about a significant amount of money.
Exactly.
I mean, if you convert the three, 3 out of 4, you convert some of that and you can increase your revenue by 10% because of it.
Yeah.
That's 1.6 to 1.7 billion dollars. That's a lot of money, right?
Hmm.
However you slice it. So again, when we look at this, you're gonna say, "Oh, you're making a big deal because that's what you deal with, right?" But again, it's the little things. Why do people, seek out Buc-ee's as a destination? Because they figured out what really matters when you're traveling. Right? We've all been traveling where we go, I just want to go to someplace clean and sit down and have a nice dinner. And then you stop at a restaurant and you go, well, I'm not stopping here because I know, and that's all come out of our mouths, right? You know, it is really kind of one of those drivers. And again, Stephanie, you just came back from Europe. What was the experience in Europe compared to the United States?
I mean, true story. We found all of the restrooms in Europe to be nice, clean, particularly the airports that we were at. Had no issue there. I'm not going to name the airport, but we flew home actually late yesterday, and it was a 10-hour flight. You get off, you need to use the facility, and my husband went in and was greeted by a cockroach, instantly, and thought, oh, I don't think I want to stay in here, but it was a 10-hour flight and options are limited. So, and I too used the facilities and found it to have been in need of service, shall we say. And it was kind of, our first thought when we met back up after we used the facilities was, welcome to America.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
God
how
bless
this
them.
is how we are welcoming our foreign guests.
Yeah. And again, if COVID hasn't taught us anything, right, it is
Exactly.
that hygiene is important, and our
Yeah.
highway systems and our airports and our train stations can, help us spread stuff all around the world, right?
Wait,
So
that's,
we,
yeah,
so we really, again, this isn't, we talk about it from a monetary perspective, but it's also a health. It's a health issue that we really need to think about,
really.
and then we should expect more. And the
Hmm.
payback for that is exponential based on the survey results, right? If you spend a little more time, a little more effort on the details, boy, does this sound familiar at any part of business, right? If you focus on the details and care about the things that your clients care about, you get exponential benefit from it. And that's revenue that you're going to generate from restaurant sales, other sales that are happening within those venues. That's really why you have these rest stops, right? Right. That's what we turn them into. So focus on the thing that really matters, and you will become that destination like Buc-ee's or like a Wawa or others that, again, were cited in our survey.
Yeah, and you mentioned the issue of consistency. Uh, it seems to me that what Bucky's and Wawa have figured out is how to be consistent with the cleaning of restrooms, right? In the
Yeah.
survey, we saw some of the names pop up on the good side and the bad side, right? Same facilities without naming them, right? Well, that could just be inconsistent cleaning, right?
Yeah.
Or to your point, 100 people just landed, and so they've gone in there, but they're not cleaning it at the right time.
Yeah.
So there's an
Right.
inconsistency in the approach,
Yeah.
which, depending on the time of the day, that you as the traveler went in there, maybe you had a good experience, but maybe an hour later somebody had a bad experience. So then you never really know what you can count on, right?
Yeah, but when we looked at the results though, we took those two things into account. So if your positives outweighed your negatives, it's a very positive experience, right? We all know, right, that there might be an issue, and you're gonna, I'll be traveling, I'll go into a Wawa, which is not as clean as it needs to be, right? But you know what? It might be at the end of the cycle, somebody's coming in, right, to manage it. It's the function of how do I understand that, and that's the kind of data that we're providing people where we want to look at, flights, for example. right? Flight routes are consistent. They run the same time every day, right? They leave from here, they go from there. That's something that we can predict, right? And we can drive. So why not structure our cleaning around that versus, yeah, we do it at, 2, 10, and 12, right? Those are areas where we can be much more effective, and we can begin to see that type of information around it. And you're going to say, well, John, it's just cleaning. We have clients that spend $1 million a month on cleaning, right?
Mm,
Millions of dollars to clean campuses. It matters. It's money they're spending, right? So
Mhm.
this is not a little budget item that is immaterial to what's happening in running a facility. So again, there's large numbers that we're talking about that are spent on this with little visibility and accountability, other than we have the right person managing it, and when that person leaves, it's up in the air. That's where the inconsistency happens, right?
okay.
So,
Yeah, restroom cleanliness in our situation drove our behavior on these trips.
mhm,
We were doing it every year. We're doing it twice a year, whatever. Well, where did we stop? We stopped at a place where we had a good experience before. Like on the way to Florida, there's a place right across Mobile Bay that allowed pets, but it was a clean hotel, had everything we needed, and it was roughly the halfway point. Great place to stop.
yeah,
And once we had that good experience, that's where we went. And that makes sense. I'm sure a lot of people are like that. We're creatures of habit, and we're creatures that reflect on a great experience. Well, why not do it again? So
yeah.
that's just kind
So
of my perspective on it.
yeah, so I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago in Moab, Utah, and we ate at a place
Mhm.
called the Bon Voyage or Bonjour Cafe, a lovely
Mhm.
little cafe right on the center street. And Utah does something interesting. They actually grade the sanitary
Mm,
conditions in a restaurant. And this place had an A. It made me feel good that I'm eating there, right? Because that
Yeah.
person cares. That person cared about what's going on. And really, that's if you think about what we do, we help you grade where you are, right? So we'll give you a compliance score. We set up routines. So you get an 80, that's a B. There's progress, right? If you're getting a 93 on your compliance scores, it's pretty much an A. You're doing a good job, right? If you're at 98%, you're doing a great job, right, with that.
Right.
And that's really what we want to be able to say. And down the road, I'd love to have, I'd love to see one of these organizations not only, advertise the specials they have and, come eat here, but we have an A+ rating in
mm,
our restroom compliance, right?
mhm,
And giving people confidence that things are clean, things
mm,
are where they need to be, because that's the kind of thing. And again, look at Bucky's. They've made a reputation around it. And again, I've never been there. I want to go next time in the Southeast. I'm going to go, right? Just cause, right? I want to see what all the hoopla's about. But I think that's the kind of thought process that the rest of our building owners,
mhm,
facility folks need to think about going forward.
mhm. That's so interesting, the power of brand, right? You've never been to Bucky's, but
Never.
now you want to see what the hoopla is about, and it's a rest stop. It's a
A
convenience,
rest stop. Yeah.
The gas
right?
station,
Yeah.
convenience store, right?
Yeah.
But it's
I,
Right?
not just a rest stop. That's what people figure out when
Well,
they go in there. It's
yeah.
like
sure.
Disney World, for heaven's
It's like
sake.
a carnival. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like a carnival.
Yeah.
So if you want a little experience on your way to your big experience, hey, stop at Bucky's.
Right.
I saw a bit on TV that the rock star Pink had her little girl, I think it was a little girl, and she was on the road and stopped at a Bucky's. And they followed her through Bucky's, and she was going, "My God, this is amazing." Well,
Yeah.
what's better publicity than that?
That's
Yeah.
great.
And
And
we
we
don't
can't,
we don't tend to try to be very promotional in these things, especially when we have a client on. But for God's sakes, when you hear all this, why wouldn't you contract with Invisible Sun?
yeah.
If you can avoid these situations, that's what these guys can help provide. So, not to run a commercial for you, but honestly, it makes
Yeah.
no sense if you don't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
just
I want to
my
run a commercial for Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton just opened her own restaurant rest stop a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I hear
I
it's
didn't think
amazing
about that.
in
Yeah.
Tennessee, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll make a little drive around. So shout out to Dolly, and hopefully she uses some of this feedback to say, hey, this is the kind of information. This is what travelers are looking for, right? And
Mm.
I don't know Dolly like anybody, but you get a sense that she cares about people, and she's going to look at the little things about kind of that country generosity and hospitality, right?
Mhm.
And that's some of the things that when you think about it, that's the important part when you get somewhere when you're traveling.
Yep. Well, you talk about a
Absolutely.
great brand. Can
Yeah,
you be a better
exactly.
brand than Dolly Parton?
Yeah,
No,
Everyone
absolutely.
loves
no,
Dolly.
Yeah.
no, you can't.
Yeah.
Well, additional surveys are coming up. We have two that we've planned that we've at least talked about, right? This is hopefully the tip of the iceberg. The next one, is it okay if I mention
Sure.
the
Yeah.
next two that we're planning? The next one would be around, I guess I'll call it post Labor Day, when, as we said earlier, data doesn't lie, data don't lie, right? That's one of those times of the year when most people are back in the office. It's almost like a reset. I still to this day think of the beginning of the school year as kind of the beginning of the year. That's ingrained in you as a kid, right? Now I'm a professor in addition to co-leading an agency, so now it's re-ingrained in me. But yeah, the beginning of the year, in a lot of cases, people are, summer vacations are over and people are in town and more people are back in the office. So we're gonna switch from transportation hubs to high-rise office buildings. And so do you want to talk about that? And
Well,
we don't want to make it sound like Invisible Sun is just about transportation hubs.
yeah. Well, I think there's a large, we look at transportation, we look at kind of Class A office space or manufacturing facilities, healthcare, um, and offices are interesting. Like we all are being asked to come back into the office, right? Especially in corporate America.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And we're expected to be in the office X number of days. And again, there's a hybrid experience that's there. And one of the biggest concerns that people have coming back into the office is hygiene, right? I'm worried about it, right? We came out of a pandemic. We were, kind of pushed into our homes where we have control. And now we have to come back into the office, fight the traffic, figure out where I'm parking, make sure I have a desk. There's all new rules, right? And one
Right.
of the things that we want to think about is, are the locations that is the office clean? Are the restrooms clean?
Mm.
How is that happening, right? I want to make sure that my health is secure if I'm going to make this trek, right? And it really drives that hybrid experience and that back to office, right? There's, again, from a success perspective, most organizations are bringing people back 2 to 3 days a week, not 5. Many have said 5, right? But again, there's a lot of focus around that has to happen from a facility perspective, right?
Yeah.
Where we talked about it. Do I have a desk? Is that desk clean? Right? Do I have a parking spot? How do I manage all of that? And then when I have to use the facility or I go to the cafeteria, is it clean? Right? Those are things that people care about. And again, that's part of that worker experience, right? That employee experience. And if you really think about it, organizations now have folks that are employee experience officers, not just HR, but employee experience officers. So again, those are areas where we want to make sure that experience is very good so that we have productivity.
Yeah, that is one of the services we offer as an agency, which is employee engagement, right? Which has really suffered in recent years for many reasons, but COVID had a lot to do with it, right?
Yeah.
Especially with younger people, right? Who came into the workforce. Gelman, our producer. Hi, Gelman. Are you there?
Yes, hello, friend.
She usually does a singing greeting. I forgot to tell you guys
It's
that.
all good. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But people in her generation have never really who graduated from college right before or right during COVID have never known going to the office like the four of us did before COVID, right? So they have even, I mean, a lot of people are used to being able to work from home at least a couple of days a week now. But if you're, call it 28 or younger, you've never really had to go to an office more than 2 or 3 days a week. And in some cases, maybe never. So those people, tomorrow's leaders and the people who you really want to train up and be positioning to run your company in the future, their engagement is especially low. And if you do, if you will, drag them back to the office 4 days a week or whatever it is, and you got problems in the restrooms and the cafeteria, boy, you're going to lose them before you can ever really capture them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is a problem. And then the other survey that we've talked about would be a few months after that in the winter when the cold and flu season hits, which is also hygiene related. People are sneezing and sick and coughing. And I know they tell you, in the old days, right, you'd power through it. Now they're more prone to say, just stay home, right? Don't spread the germs. But people feel pressure to be there, especially maybe it's 3 days a week and this is one of your days, right? You might feel the heat to be there that day, even if you're probably going to be spreading germs, right? And so, anyway, those are the two next surveys we talked about, largely office related. Any comments on the cold and flu piece?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I'm dominating again. I apologize.
No worries.
One of those things too is not just you get sick, and then you go to the hospital. You have a
Oh,
17% chance
yeah,
of getting a communicative disease in that hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's one of those, hygiene is a really important thing, and that's an issue for a hospital where that one actual, if you get something in a hospital while you're in the hospital, it's not covered by insurance, it's not covered by Medicaid, and it costs that hospital somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 an incident. That's a lot of
That's a
money.
lot of money.
that's
Yeah,
It
unbelievable.
is,
it's unbelievable. And
and if
again,
you
it's
have
one of
to
the
spend, if you have to spend multiple days in hospital, your risk of acquiring an infection is 17%. It goes up 17% every day
Unbelievable.
that you
yeah,
stay in the hospital.
Unbelievable. And thank
it's
you for correcting me. I think that survey is geared toward hospitals, not
yeah.
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, it is.
thank you.
So I had a conversation with somebody in the hospital system. I'm not going to say who it was. That they've got a lot of complaints in their ER, because it's a public place. And the comment was, I was always wondering if they actually cleaned that bathroom or not. So you kind of think about that, right? We need to know, if we want to stem the spread of disease. We need to know that, right? We need to kind of think about that and validate that those things are happening, and that's in a hospital where it's supposed to be very sanitary,
Yeah.
right? And again, there's some scary things that we found around that too. So again, these are areas, and we can always find the extreme example of this happening and that happening, but it's the not knowing that is the issue, right? It's
Yeah.
not that you're not doing the work, you're just not knowing, and that is where your risk is, and that's where the expense comes in, especially for a
Mhm.
hospital system, where you can get MRSA or C. diff or a number of other diseases that come along with this that depending on your age, can be fatal if you get
Yeah.
them. So again, those are areas where we're trying to highlight that. Is our solution going to solve all of that problem? No, but we can give you the visibility to actually help you pinpoint what's going on, and especially in the hospital situation, if we partner with, there's some really cool uh, tape product that you can put on door handles called Silver Defender. Awesome stuff out of New Jersey that literally takes, you don't have to wipe it. It literally kills the bacteria. There are misting and fogging machines that will, drive that. There's, there's vacuums and electric mops and robot mops that will clean the floors where we can focus on it. These are areas where we can look at these technologies and combine with what we're doing and create a very hygienic experience that is data driven, where that compliance score becomes a metric for the CEO of the health system, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That to me becomes something that moves the needle in healthcare.
No question. And think about it from the consumer's perspective. If you're the patient, or let's say you're visiting the patient, unlike a highway rest stop, you're not going to hold it and go to the next one.
Yeah.
They're in the hospital, right? And so you're kind of stuck there. And so, yeah, so the consumer doesn't really have a choice. Not to mention the people who work there, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, yeah, no, I mean, that's got to be one of the world's biggest ironies, the the uh, the likelihood of getting sick in a hospital. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just cruelly ironic, right? But it's true. The data don't lie, right? So you're here
Yeah.
to, yeah,
Exactly. And usually the people that get sick are the ones that are most vulnerable, the elderly,
yeah,
right? The ill, right? They have something, they get something else along with it. Maybe that something else kills you, right? Not the disease that you're in with. So those are areas where we can do better in the United States. We're a first world country, we can do better.
no question.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Anything, John and or Stephanie, that you'd like to say to kind of summarize what you're all about and what you're here trying to do?
I think what we're all about is visibility and accountability in an area where independent workers are trying to do a good job and they need support. And our solution provides that to them and helps them do a better job and and exemplifies what is good in that marketplace and
Yeah,
smokes out what makes them look bad, right? The folks that don't do the
Mhm.
work or the areas where we're neglecting something that needs to be looked at. And that's really what we do. We help provide that data in a space where there's not a lot of data. It's on hopes and dreams, and that we know how that works, right? And if we compare and contrast it to our energy management and access control, we measure absolutely everything on one side and absolutely nothing on the other. And it's time that we actually start measuring on the other side.
yeah, yeah. Good point. Good point. Stephanie, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think John covered it really well, and we really appreciate you having us on the podcast today.
The pleasure is ours. This is an important topic. It's an economic topic. It is a health topic. All of these things, right? I will say this: we should, Jeff, not forget to promote their website.
Yeah.
Stephanie, what's your URL on your site?
www.invisiblesun.us.
.us. That's right. And there is a land, and you can, if you see this and you're interested in learning more about the data from the survey, there is a press release out there that's very easy to find. If you Google it, we called it officially the 2026 Invisible Sun Summer Travel Index. But there's also a landing page on the Invisible Sun site that summarizes all of the key data points and findings from the survey. So it's all out there. We encourage you to find it. We encourage you to reach out to the company. They are here to help. This is important stuff. So thank you both for all you do through the company, and thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it very much. And of course, thank you for your business. We do appreciate that very, very much. Jeff, you want to do our closing thingy?
I will do our closing thingy. And again, thank you so much, John and Stephanie. Um, the work you do is really important. We want to make sure people recognize how important that is, not just hygiene itself, but what it leads to. So again, thank you very, very much. And thank you everyone who's joined us for this podcast. We have a growing audience, which we're really happy about, and we want you to keep on joining us. So we're going to try to always be topical. We'll bring it into the realm of marketing and communications every time, or at least we'll try really hard. So keep in touch with us. Read our press releases. We're on all the major social platforms, and we look forward to engaging with you. And hire us, please. We're always
My,
looking for some great new clients like Invisible
my,
Sun.
mine
So,
are due. So,
hey,
hey,
thank you
you
very
hire
much.
us and you get to be on a podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a really good chance you'll get to be on this podcast and you get to interact personally with John Clendenning and me.
Who who wouldn't want to do that?
Who would want to do that? You'd be crazy, crazy. So anyway, guys, thank you very much. Have a super week ahead, and we look forward to interacting with all of you again.
Stay cool, everyone. See y'all later.
Stay cool.